My name is Sarah, and I have spent the last 5 years of my life as a ghost in my own story. 3 weeks ago, I stood in a courtroom in downtown Hartford, Connecticut, listening to my ex-husband Mark tell a judge that I was an unfit mother. He sat there in a suit that cost more than my car, his hands folded perfectly, performing the role of the concerned father for an audience of one. He told the judge that our son Leo was being raised in a sad, unstable environment, and that a boy of his potential deserved a family that could offer him more than a lowly nurse's salary. The room was silent, and for a moment I felt that old familiar coldness, the feeling of being erased. I looked at the judge, a woman who had seen 1,000 cases just like mine, and I wondered if she could see through the expensive fabric of Mark's lies. But I wasn't the scared girl who had been kicked out into a storm anymore. I was the woman who had learned to keep receipts. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I simply handed a manila folder to the bailiff and said 4 words that changed everything. Look at the logs. Before I tell you what the judge saw in that folder and how it collapsed Mark's world, I need to take you back to the beginning. You need to understand the family I married into and the one I had to leave behind to find myself. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story speaks to you. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I grew up in a house where love was something you had to earn. In my family, my sister was the visionary and I was practical. I was the daughter who stayed in the background, the one who didn't cause drama. When I met Mark at 24, he felt like a way out. He was charming, confident, and came from a family that looked picture perfect from the outside. His parents, the Averys, were the kind of people who donated to the right charities and sat in the front pews at church. They lived in a 3-story colonial in Fairfield County where every lawn was manicured to a perfection. Mark was their star, their investment. When we got married, I thought I was finally becoming part of a real family. I didn't realize that, in the Avery household, there were 2 types of people, those who were served and those who served. I quickly became the second kind. I was the one who coordinated the holiday dinners while Mark's sister, Vanessa, sat on the sofa checking her phone. I was the one who polished the silver and cleared the plates while they discussed their latest 7-figure campaigns. My mother-in-law, Diane, would look at my scrubs after a long shift at the hospital and sigh. She'd say things like, "Sarah, honey, have you thought about a career with more upward mobility? You can't wipe old people's bottoms forever." Mark never defended me. He just checked his watch and told me to hurry up with dinner. I was free help. I was furniture. The cracks really started when I got pregnant with Leo. Mark was thrilled, but only because a son meant carrying the legacy forward. But when Leo was born with a chronic respiratory condition that required constant care and late-night hospital visits, the legacy became too much work. Mark started staying late at the office. He couldn't deal with the stress. He told me I was too sensitive and that I made everything about the baby. When Leo was 14 months old, I found out Mark had been seeing someone else, a woman his parents approved of, someone from their circle. When I confronted him, his response was cold. He said, "Sarah, let's be reasonable. You're a nurse. You're used to hospitals. You handle the sick stuff. I have a career to build." He moved out that night, and his parents stopped calling the next day. They erased me and Leo as if we had never existed at all. For 3 years, I raised Leo alone. I worked double shifts, took out personal loans to cover his medical bills, and spent my nights on a bathroom floor with a sick toddler, while my ex-husband posted photos of his perfect life on Instagram. My own parents were no better. They told me I always picked the wrong guys, and that I was embarrassing the family by being a single mother. I learned to celebrate Leo's birthdays with a marked-down cake and a card signed only by me. I learned that family isn't blood. It's who shows up. Then, 6 months ago, everything changed. Mark's new wife, a socialite named Victoria, decided she wanted the perfect family image to help Mark's bid for a senior partnership at his firm. Suddenly, the unwanted daughter and the burden of a grandson were necessary props for their PR move. They showed up at my door with a blank check and a demand for 50/50ths custody. When I said no, the gloves came off. Mark hired a lawyer who specialized in high-conflict estates and began a campaign to prove I was unstable. He told our mutual friends that I was struggling with mental health issues. He told his parents I was preventing him from being a father. And finally, he sued for full custody, claiming I was unworthy of raising a child of his status. That leads us back to that courtroom 3 weeks ago. Mark sat in the witness stand and gave a performance that would have won an Oscar. He talked about family unity and his desperate need to be in his son's life. He cried on cue tears I had never seen him shed in all the years Leo was in the ICU. He said he never left our side. But I had something he didn't expect. I had spent years in the hospital, and I knew how systems worked. I had requested the visitor logs from every single one of Leo's 36 hospitalizations. I had every text message where he told me he couldn't deal with a sick kid. I had the financial records showing that while he was buying $5,000 suits, I was the one paying for Leo's inhalers and therapy. The judge took the folder I handed her. The room was so still you could hear the furnace humming, just like in my old basement. I watched her eyes move across the pages. I watched her see the column that said visitors, none, for 36 consecutive visits. I watched her read the text where Mark told me to get a loan because he had just paid for a vacation. The silence stretched for what felt like years. Then the judge looked up. She didn't look at me. She looked at Mark. Her voice was quiet, but it had the weight of a gavel. She said, "Mr. Avery, you told this court that you never left your son's side. But these records show that in 3 years you didn't show up once. Not once." Mark's face went the color of old paper. He tried to speak, to spin it, to say I was taking it out of context. But the judge held up the log. "Facts don't have context, Mr. Avery, they just are." She denied his petition for custody on the spot. She ordered him to pay 3 years of back child support and all my legal fees. But more than that, she looked at me and said, "Miss Thompson, you are not a nuisance. You are a protector. And your son is exactly where he belongs." As I walked out of that courtroom, Mark's parents were waiting in the hallway. They looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by the truth. My mother tried to reach for my hand, her face arranged in that practiced smile of grief. She said, "Sarah, sweetheart, we didn't know. We can be a family again." I stepped back, just like I had learned to do. I looked at the woman who had called me a lowly teacher and used goods. I looked at the man who had stayed silent while his daughter was erased. And I said the same 4 words my father had once said to me when I was fighting for my life. "I can't deal with this right now." I walked away and I didn't look back. Because I finally understood that setting a boundary isn't revenge, it's survival. It's choosing yourself when no one else will. Today, Leo and I have a life that is full of light and life. We have a small apartment with a window that overlooks the trees, and we have family who actually show up, friends like Harper and Aunt Ruth, who saw me when I was invisible. I am no one's servant, no one's background radiation, and no one's bad investment. I am a mother, I am a nurse, and for the first time in 32 years, I am home. If you are in a storm right now, or if your family makes you feel like you have to shrink to be loved, remember this. You don't need their permission to know your worth. Keep your receipts, trust the truth, and never ever let anyone dim your light. You deserve to be chosen first. Thank you for staying until the end. Remember, you define your worth, nobody else. I'll see you in the next story.